constantly reminding yourself that what's bothering you isn't necessarily what's happening. What's bothering you is what you believe about what's happening.
Welcome to Personal Development Mastery Podcast, episode 362. I'm your host, Agi Keramidas, and my mission is to inspire you to take the actions you need to improve your life. In this podcast, I invite myself into the minds of remarkable people and I distill their wisdom to equip you with the simple, consistent actions you need to master yourself and create a life of purpose and fulfillment. If you want to cultivate a resilience mindset, learn how to not give up in the face of adversity, and be able to stay calm in the midst of turmoil, then the following conversation with my guest Bill Keefe is for you. Bill is the fire team captain for Tony Robbins, and I met him last year when I volunteered as a fire team crew member for the Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within event. The mindset and skills we are discussing today are immediately transferable to everyday life and leadership. Let's dive right in. Today I am delighted to speak with Bill Keefe. Bill, you are fire team captain for the Tony Robbins organization. You are currently living in the islands of Fiji in the South Pacific for the past 13 years as co-general manager of the luxury resort and spa Namale, owned by Tony Robbins. I had the privilege to meet you in person in 2023 during Tony Robbins' event Unleash the Power Within in Birmingham, where I was volunteering as a fire team crew member. And I will say two things here. The first, you were one of the most inspiring leaders I had the privilege to meet and serve with. And number two, I learned so many things from you those 3 days, and there are some learnings that will stay with me forever. So, Bill, I'm very grateful to have you here with me today.
Well, thank you, Agni, and thank you for those very kind words. I'm humbled by that. It was great. Great meeting you and working with you there in Birmingham, and you did an outstanding job for us on the team, and I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you. And there are many intriguing topics that I want to explore with you today. And some of them include those learnings that I got from you that I mentioned in the introduction. Before we go there, I would like to start with some relevant elements of your journey, or maybe a key defining moment. So I know that it was 2011 that you relocated with your wife and 3 daughters to Fiji. Can you tell me a bit about the transition there and how that changed? So let's start with with that.
Sure. Yeah. In 2011, I'd already been contracting with the Robbins organization for 7 years. I began as a contractor in 2004 as assistant fire captain, and then fire captain starting in 2008. And so Tony knew me by that association, and he also knew that we were living in the Bahamas, my wife and our kids, and we were in the scuba diving industry in the Bahamas. And I guess he was looking. He first reached out in 2010. They were looking to make a management change here at Namale, and he just reached out and said, "Hey, do you have any interest at all in possibly looking into this opportunity and changing hemispheres for a few years?" And I was very, very flattered by the offer.
Mm-hmm.
And but we had discussions, and we have three daughters, and they were ages 12 to 17.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a number of things that kind of I saw as obstacles. But I did commit to come out and take a look at the property in September of 2010. And I'd never been to the South Pacific. I'd certainly never been to Fiji before. And when I got here, I was here about maybe a day and a half at the resort looking around. And I called back home
Mm-hmm.
to my wife, Naudlin, and I said, listen, I know we're still probably not going to be in a position to take this job, but we have to look at it much more seriously than we originally had.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of coming out just as a courtesy to Mr. Robbins. He had been nice enough to extend this offer,
Mm-hmm.
and I had told him that I thought there were a lot of things that might prevent us from being able to go. And he said, but you're still interested, right? Tony gets single-minded at times. And I said, yeah. And so he came home from that trip, and it was really at the time all about the kids, us not wanting to uproot the kids. And so it was coming to decision time. Are we going to pursue this or not pursue this? And so we sat the family down, completely anticipating that this is not something that our children would want to do right now. And we were both, Naudlin and I, were very keen to kind of watch their body language, because they might say yes just because they thought
Mm-hmm.
that the parent that we wanted to go, but we didn't want to do this without giving them a vote in the process. And to our surprise, all three said, "Heck yeah, we want to go. When would we ever get a chance to live in Fiji?"
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, "Wow, didn't expect that." And so Tony flew my wife and the kids out at that point to have a look, and it was they loved it when they were here. So it's really funny how the universe kind of guides you through things. Once that major hurdle was over, the other 14 or 15 reasons I'd listed
Mm-hmm.
into why we couldn't go just started to fall away.
Mm-hmm.
And we had owned a small family-run dive business on the island of Bimini, and with we were at a major hotel there, based on property. And the hotel, once they saw I went to Fiji, then my wife went to Fiji with the kids to look around, they kind of figured it, they added up one and one and got two, and preemptively came to us and said, "Hey, if you guys are thinking of moving on, we'd rather than put the business up for sale to an outside buyer," they said, we would just like to buy it from you.
Mm-hmm.
So that we retain control over that. And that really was the second big chunk. So kind of all the other objections fell away. And by December of 2010, we'd reached an agreement, and we flew out here on February 11th of 2011. And it's been probably one of the greatest moves that we made. It's really worked out for us, our family. I think the organization has felt it was a worthwhile shift for them also. We came out with a contract that was supposed to be 2 years with an option to 5, and like you had said earlier, it's now been 13 years. So.
Thank you. There is, I got something that you said from that story, that once the major hurdle was taken care of, all the small ones fell away. So that's something that I'm repeating because I think it is an important point. There is something I wanted to ask you about Fiji, which I haven't been. Of course, for most of us, it sounds like a really beautiful, exotic destination. But I have heard about something called Fiji time, which apparently is not very easy with, cultures like ours to get used to. So, how did you cope with it, with that Fiji time culture?
Well, backing up prior to being in Fiji, I have not actually lived in the United States since 1981.
Right.
I had moved to the Bahamas in 81 as a diving instructor, scuba instructor, and that's where I met Naudla. Her parents had moved to the Bahamas from Canada in the early 60s. So that this is where we met. So we've had a lot of years of quote unquote island living, and almost regardless of which Caribbean island you're in, South Pacific island you're in, you've got Bahamas time, you've got Jamaican time, you've got Fiji time. It's just in these island cultures. There's not as much emphasis on the clock. And so, it's something, but it's probably overblown, the whole concept of Fiji time. Our guests really like Fiji time, but the resort does not operate on Fiji time. When we say something's going to happen at 7:00, it's happening at 7:00. We do have kind of a culture amongst the staff here, and so it's okay for the guests to operate on Fiji time. It's not okay for myself and the wonderful workers that we've got here. It's not that much of an issue. There's another thing in Fiji called the Fiji factor.
Right.
Now, and that's what that is there's some really great things about living in a first world country. There's a lot of great things about living in a developing country. So you take the good with the bad. Just because of how remote the country is, or the island is, it means that if you're making plans 3 months down the road, you've got to put some fudge factor into whatever it is you're planning, with deadlines and things of that sort, because it's much more complicated to get some of the items that you might rely on. Things have to come by freight boat, or if they're coming by airline, it's incredibly expensive and time-consuming method of shipping things here. So you have to take the good with the bad, or the challenging with the easy, and that's kind of behind what you were asking about in terms of Fiji time.
That's great. No, thank you for that. It's really nice to envision it like that. Bill, I would like to steer the conversation towards really what we set intention to discuss about, and some of the the fire team moments and insights and learnings, which as I said in the introduction, they had a very big impact on me. So I think, I was thinking of which one to begin with, but the one I will begin with, and it was the one that you had a quote on your T-shirt, which it kind of followed us, and I think it applies with so many things in life, really, and our endeavors and everything that we do. And that was something that David Goggins had said: don't quit
Yep.
when you're tired, quit when you're done. So I would like to hear your thoughts about that phrase, and maybe how do you perceive it on a more on a level, connected with your experience in the fire team and so on.
Yeah, that's one of the very, very powerful kind of phrases that I picked up on. I actually saw that on a poster.
Mm-hmm.
The poster was of David Goggins, but it was long before David Goggins was a well-known common name.
Right.
David Goggins is an incredible individual. He's accomplished some amazing physical feats. The poster that I saw it on, he's one of these ultra marathon runners, and it was just a picture of him, running in the middle of some huge desert,
Mm-hmm.
and it just said, "Don't quit when you're tired, quit when you're done." And the minute I saw it, I said, "Man, that sounds a lot like Fire Team." Because as you had the experience this past year. We do a lot of preparation the day before the fire walk, but on fire walk day, it generally begins about 7:00 in the morning. And, and in this case, it was a Thursday, so 7 a.m. on a Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't finish on a good night. We would finish at 3 a.m. the following morning on Friday. And I think that was about the time that we wrapped things up when we were,
it was a good
in
night.
Birmingham.
Yes.
Yeah. But this is, if you take the average person, that is in a workaday world,
Mm-hmm.
you've got an 8-hour workday. And because of where we are with technology today, probably 65, 70%, maybe even more of those people who are doing an 8-hour workday are doing it sitting at a desk,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they're working from home remotely, but they are not outside making a living by doing something physical.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that do, but they don't. So when you combine the fact that we're now asking these volunteers to do like 2.5 full work days, and as you know, the hardest part of that work day was at the end of that day, from about midnight until 3 in the morning, that's where we needed everybody's energy. And we talked a lot about that. I said, we have to clean this place up when we're done. And that's going to be where you got to dig deep. You've got to find your level of resilience to get the job done. And it's got to be the team that has this mindset, not just an individual, but every individual. If you remember, we also talked about make sure that you are there when we finish, whenever that happens to be. And we realize that people have physical limitations, and we talked a lot about this, that we're not asking that people do ridiculous things beyond their physical capabilities. We're not asking anyone to get hurt. We're not asking anyone to do anything that would cause them endanger their health. But on the other side of that, the phrase that kind of goes along with "don't quit when you're tired, quit when you're done," is that concept of 20x we also talked about, that most people really never kind of push and test and see how resilient they might be. And here's an opportunity to kind of test that. you're one of, I think we had close to 70 volunteers for the job in Birmingham, and you've got a strong team around you. So you've kind of got a safe environment to, you know what, maybe I can, maybe before I sit down and take a rest. And we did encourage everyone to, you're the best judge of what you're capable of and what you're not capable of. Mm-hmm. But you can take this opportunity to maybe push yourself a little bit farther, see what you've got, and just make that decision at the beginning of the day. I'm not going to quit and go home when I'm tired or when I'm exhausted or when, I'm staying until this job is finished, and I'm going to contribute at the highest level and do the best that I possibly can. Mm-hmm. And most people find that they are capable of a lot more than they had originally believed that they were. And unless the team has that mindset going into this, that the whole thing can collapse, especially in those final 3 or 4 hours, mm-hmm. where, we're cleaning that parking lot up or whatever venue we used for the fire walk. And, basically makes it look better than it was when we started mm-hmm. the whole operation. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the long answer on that one. But don't quit when you're tired, quit when you're done also goes. We don't quit when it's raining. We quit when it's done. We don't quit when it's snowing. We quit when we're done. There's a lot of slightly different versions of that we use based on, what we encounter. Mm-hmm.
If you enjoy this episode, can you find one person you think would find it useful and share it with them? I'd really appreciate it. It helps the show grow, and you'll also be adding value to people you care about. Thank you. And now let's get back to the episode. And, I found personally that these perceived limits, because these limits that we perceive them, they are not real limits, and it's our mind that tells us that you are exhausted, whereas we have much more capability. So I found, you mentioned about digging deep and finding that resilience, and for me, I remember I drew that resilience and that strength from the team, the environment, the people around me, and the tasks we were doing. So there was a combination of factors that really allowed me easily, I would add, or easier than I thought maybe, to go past those perceived limits. And you're right about the 12 o'clock, and that's when all the fun is finished, all the anticipation. It's not it's the anticlimax afterwards. So that's and it's the also the most dirty and filthy and stinky work, but that's another topic. But it's a great I believe philosophy to face things in life. Don't quit when you're tired, quit when you're done. And Bill, there is one other thing that I learned those days, and I actually mentioned that. It was what I mentioned when we were doing the debrief after the experience, after it was worked. So just to explain, all 70 of us shared our experience, our challenges, whatever felt like it was appropriate at that time. And it was a very, I think it was 5 hours, it was many hours, but it was so deep, so emotional, so vulnerable, so emotional roller coaster. But I'm digressing now, talking about the actual debrief. The learning itself was, and I think also that was mentioned many times during those days. It was that metaphor of the rock in the river, and that came to me as a realization. You had mentioned that when we were doing the training before, But it was for me when we were doing the actual, when the firework was happening, and I was holding my wheelbarrow full of hot coals, and I had to be the calmness in among the chaos that it was happening to my left and to the right, with people jumping and walking and screaming. So the realization, and I will ask you about your take on it. My realization was that this kind of, when I managed to focus on my breathing, on my grounding, on where I was and what I had to do, everything else that was happening moved to the periphery. It was not in the forefront of my attention. It was still happening, but it was around me. It was not on me. And it is that metaphor with like a rock in the river. The water goes around the rock, but the rock doesn't care about that. The rock remains doing what the rock does. So it made me realize how this is a metaphor for life, in the sense that when life throws at us chaos or difficulties, then we can indeed maintain our posture, sort of speaking, whereas whatever life is throwing at us is still happening in the periphery. So that was my, interpretation or how I saw it. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this rock in the river.
Well, you hit the nail right on the head, Agi. That's we're sharing this with the volunteers. One, and primarily because we need you to be in that state of calm, focus, and global awareness. Those are the three things. And it's one of those skills that you can take away from this experience, from working on a fire team, and use it in your daily life. If you look at it, it's basically being calm amongst the chaos. And this isn't to say that the fire walk is chaos. It's absolutely not. It's kind of choreographed chaos. But as you know, there were, I want to say, 12,000 participants in the fire walk, and then another 350 crew members besides our team, separate from fire team, that were actually conducting the walk, the people over the coals. And they all need to be in a specific state in order to do what they're going to do. The participants need to be in a very heightened state. They need to focus, but they need to be keeping themselves in a peak state. And the event crew who are guiding them over these firewalk lanes, they also need to match that state and be very enthusiastic to make the whole thing work. Our team, as you were saying, you were behind a wheelbarrow full of coals. Those coals, as you know, they were in Fahrenheit, they were about 1,200 degrees in the wheelbarrows. And there were 2 wheelbarrows full of coals in between every pair of lanes. So we had to be very, very focused to protect that wheelbarrow and make 100% sure that not one individual participating in that fire walk or guiding that fire walk, and ourselves, was going to be injured by that. And that's why we did all of the training. But the rock in the river it's a mental exercise to be able to be detached from what's going on around you. And not detached doesn't mean not paying attention. Be detached, not get wrapped up in the drums that are playing, the cadence, the chants that people are doing to get themselves ready so that they're going to walk across the coals. You have to be able to be in the midst of that, be calm, be centered, globally aware, always aware of what's going on around you. When we taught people, how do you protect the wheelbarrow? How do you make sure that no one, veers into the wheelbarrow? And you guys did an outstanding job at that. And I guess I picked up that metaphor going back to when I was a volunteer on this team, and I was one of the shovelers. I just remember standing there in between two lanes with people flowing past me very, very quickly, and you could not focus on any one person, because now everything is all of your emphasis is looking at one or maybe two people, and you're not aware of what's going on around you. You always have to be aware of what's going on around you. And it's just the mental image that came to me is there's this rushing water going by, and I'm this big rock in the middle of a river. Back in my younger days and Boy Scout days, I used to lead some whitewater canoe trips, and you kind of get to know what the different level of rapids will do, and you see a lot of rocks depending on what river that you're in, and the rocks don't move. The rocks simply stay there, and they don't care. It doesn't care how much water is coming down the river. The rock doesn't care, and so that's where the rock in the river metaphor comes from. And a lot of people pull from that. And then I think in order to keep yourself calm, you also have to keep your breathing under control. And I shared with the team some of the breathing techniques that will allow you to stay calm and centered. But if you need to respond, you're going to be able to quickly respond.
Thank you. I got a phrase that you said. I really liked it. You said to be detached from what's happening around you, and I think that is a perfect, explanation in a very concise way of being detached.
Yes. I ended up, I'd been talking about the rock in the river for a while, but the whole concept of detached came later. When I began to read things, I read quite a bit of Jocko Willink's stuff, and he really talks about that in terms of leaders and people in leadership positions. Sometimes you can't be in the middle of the fray. In order to make the right decision, you have to be able to detach, maybe separate yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
See what's happening, what's happening, what's your team doing, what's the result. And by being able to detach, you have a much better chance of assessing what's happening and then making the right call about what you need to do about it. So it kind of bolstered up something that I had very roughly stumbled upon years earlier.
Yeah, I really like it. As I said, it's something that it will remain with me as a metaphor and as an image and as an experience and as a learning and a practice actually for forever. So, Bill, this is truly a fascinating conversation. I will before I start wrapping up, there is something I wanted to ask.
Sure.
You have been Tony Robbins Fire Captain for many years. You have been in his proximity. You've known him for a long time. Tell me one of the most important things you learned from him.
Oh boy. I've learned so much from being in the Robbins organization. I went to my first UPW in 1997, went through all of the life mastery programs, and I didn't even go to volunteer crew until the year 2001. So I guess
I know it's a difficult
yes.
question, and I'm not saying to asking you to give me the one, but maybe one perhaps relevant to our discussion, if you want.
Yeah. Yes. And Agi, you just used one of Tony's primary teachings. he knows if you try and get someone to say what is the best, so you take the pressure off by saying, well, what's one of your top 4 or 5 things,
Exactly.
and in that, but it's probably state management overall, and constantly reminding yourself is that it's what's bothering you isn't necessarily what's happening. What's bothering you is what you believe about what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can shift your belief, if you can shift your state, your state really guides almost everything that you're going to do and the way that you're going to perceive something. So no human can stay in a peak state, in a positive state 24/7, 365.
Mm-hmm.
Just, it's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can catch yourself, going down an avenue that isn't serving you, this isn't good, and you can consciously say, all right, I just need to do a little 2 millimeter shift here. I need to do I just need to reframe how I'm perceiving what's happening. What's really true. Is this situation as bad as I'm making it to be, or is it? Am I just kind of feeling sorry for myself? Mm. So there's so many other learnings, as you've been in the environment now for quite some time, but that overriding approach to things in general has been one of the really key tools that I learned from Tony a long time ago, and carries with me today. Mm-hmm. Just to add on a little bit, I also, because we work outside as fire team, but there was a period between 2004 and 2010, 2011, where when I was done with fire team, I joined the security detail for Mr. Robbins inside at the events. So I had a lot of years standing at the stage for UPWs and the Date with Destiny events. So I had the privilege of hearing Tony teach people these skill sets, and it just kind of ingrained itself in my brain. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of folks don't have the opportunity like that to hear him so many times over and over again. So that was and all my coworkers on the security team felt the same way. We just sit there and listen to Tony reinforce these really core principles, and it really helped. It helps me, and that thing about managing state and really digging in deep and saying, are things as bad as I'm making them out to be, or do I just need to do a shift here? That's key. Again, the long version of the long answer to the question you asked.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I know it's a difficult question, but I took one thing you said that towards the end that he was reinforcing, which it's important to get that all this. It's not one-off. The more you listen to something empowering, the more it becomes ingrained. I think you used that word.
Yep.
Bill,
repetition's the mother of skill.
Absolutely. Bill, I have a couple of last quick fire questions, which I sure. always ask my guests. And the first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
To me, it means using what I've learned over the years to just be a better person. Just to try and be the person, trying to be the person that my kids see, mm-hmm. And try and hold that standard. And I guess that's it. I guess that's it. Personal development never stops. You don't get a diploma at the end of a program and say, okay, I got it. But it's an ongoing process, and just keep working on yourself.
That's brilliant. And a hypothetical question: if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give him?
Oh, geez. Probably put more effort into the 4-year university experience you're about to set yourself out on. I was, I was a solid C student all the way through college. I swam in college, and that was my big thing for me. And I wish I'd put a little bit more effort into my studies when I was there. But who knows? I don't know if that would have changed the course of my life at all. I've been very blessed. But if I was going back to talk to an 18-year-old me, it would be pay more attention, spend more time in the books.
Thank you. Bill, I want to thank you very much for your time for this conversation. I very much enjoyed it, and I believe we covered, and I hope that we went a bit deeper on some important principles. So I want to wish you all the very best, and I would like to leave it with you with your final thoughts or parting words. Or one thing I enjoy giving to the listener is always some kind of practical piece of advice, something that they can implement, as a result of listening to the conversation. What's the next step? What's something that one can do to carry on?
First of all, let me thank you, Augie. It was great. I had a lot of fun on this, and this is my very first podcast interview. So yeah. So thank you for that. And I guess if I were to leave one piece of advice, it would be using one other phrase that we use on Fire Team, and that is, give yourself the opportunity, challenge yourself at something. And you'll remember the phrase, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. If you can do that, if you can put yourself in a situation that makes you a little uneasy, a little uncomfortable, and just do the best that you can at that. That's probably one of the top 3 or 4 key things that you can do to really start to find out what your limitations are, or more likely that the limitations you had put on yourself really aren't true for you, that you are capable of a lot more. But put yourself in those uncomfortable situations, do your best, and you're going to get results out of that.
And before I close today's episode, I want to add 2 very important things. The first is an open invitation to you who are listening right now. I invite you to find me on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn and send me a direct message, and we can chat about anything you want. You can tell me who your favorite guest has been so far, or tell me who you'd like me to interview next, or anything else you'd like to discuss about the podcast and how it can serve you better. So that's an open invitation. Drop me a line and we will chat. The second thing I want to mention here is something that people often ask me about, and that is how to work with me. So one of the main services I offer is one-to-one mentoring on mindset, personal development, confidence, and finding your voice. You can find more information about my services on my website, and please feel free to contact me for any further details. Until next time, stand out, don't fit in.